Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. This is a conversation between Kingdom Death Monster and Primal the Awakening. Primal the Awakening is currently on Kickstarter. It is guaranteed to cross the 2 million mark and potentially might inch up at the 2.5 or 3 million mark by the time the campaign ends. I believe there is 5 days left at the time that I'm recording this video. And Kingdom Death Monster, if you're not familiar, is the groundbreaking, at one point the most funded Kickstarter or most funded board game Kickstarter in our community. It has been passed by Frosthaven, but this is a giant black box of monster hunting glory and is my favorite game of all time. And this video is going to be a unedited conversation. I have 5 main points that I want to go through, my own thought process and mindset, my opinions on both of these games, and an analysis for those of you that are interested on how they compare, how they mesh up. Because, let's be honest, I mean, at a $300 price point for all the content and a $350 to $400 price point for the base game, which comes with probably an equivalent amount of content, there is a worthwhile conversation or debate to be had here. That being said, I do want to provide some context or caveats to this conversation. I am already biased for Kingdom Death Monster. Kingdom Death Monster is a nostalgia trip for me and is still my favorite game of all time, and Primal the Awakening is not threatening or changing that. Along with that, though, this video is not a discussion about positives and negatives necessarily. This isn't a attack Primal and defend Kingdom Death. This is a conversation about my thoughts around the comparison. Why one of these games might be a better fit for you in your gaming group, despite where I fall on that line or spectrum. Along with that, I only have the prototype of Primal the Awakening here. So I've been able to show off or show down against 2 of the main featured monsters. There is a whole mix of them available in the campaign. I've been able to play through a few scenarios, but I haven't been able to craft gear, go through the campaign, do any of the thorough events. I have been able to read about them in the campaign rules, but there will be a lack of comparison or a lack of knowledge when it comes to some of the story elements of Primal, as opposed to some of the story elements of KDM. Really, this review, this coverage is going to come down to mainly the progression of the game, my overall impressions of the game, and that main showdown, that Monster Hunter glory, right? And to be fair, that is where you're going to be spending the majority of your gameplay, and so I feel like we can talk about it. The 5 points that I'm going through, overview of each of these games, why are we comparing them? Because I think it's worthwhile to acknowledge why this has been a requested or demanded video. There's a lot of people asking right now. I get messages nearly every day saying, hey, what are your thoughts around KDM versus Primal? Next, we're going to look at the showdown specifically. Then we're going to look at the characters, how they progress in a different way. I can't quite talk about the campaign, but I can talk about my sense of the longevity of the game and what the experience overall will be like. And then I want to take a look at the best moments in each of these games, and then finally the worst moments for me in each of these games. And that'll be a video. That'll be a comparison. Let me know how I am wrong or right, or ultimately what your consensus is down below. I'd love to hear your impressions of these games, whether or not you've picked up either of them, whether or not you're picking up both of them, or if this video has helped you make a decision. So, a brief overview of both of these titles. We'll start here with Kingdom Death Monster. Kingdom Death Monster is going to be a historically massive title. The core box alone is $400, but then there are expansions upon expansions upon expansions that are available, and it has really came to fame as an intro hobby game with a ton of miniatures that you build and paint, combined with a Monster Hunter campaign-style showdown game. This is a dystopian nightmare world where you are a settlement of lone survivors doing your very best to go out, hunt for survival, gather resources, bring them back to your settlement, unlock new weapon crafting abilities and different gear and armor and potions, upgrade your characters, and then send out a new party of hunters in order to take down another beast. This game is not actually about the characters that you're playing as. This game is primarily about the settlement itself. your characters will die. They are the weakest creatures in this entire existence, and they will be crumbled into dust by the pure whim and malice of this game. But as long as your settlement survives, then your game goes on and continues to progress. This will be a 60-hour campaign in total, playing through a ton of different Lantern Years, and has a lot of replayability in the box. Primal the Awakening is currently on Kickstarter. It is going to be a card-driven tactics game where you're doing your very best to show down against a creature, but instead of a gridded pattern like you might see in an RPG or a role-playing game experience, you're actually playing on a circular grid with only 4 zones to position your characters. You're paying a lot more attention to adjacency, whether or not you're in the front or the back, on the side of the creature, and where they might be vulnerable. The majority of the game is going to come down to your personal hand of cards and the reactions that the creature is going to be exhibiting. Primal is much closer to Monster Hunter in the sense of aesthetics and theme. You are really going out and using the weapons and bones and resources that you've collected from these creatures to hunt down more of them and bring back and upgrade your village. Primal focuses on the hero's journey, playing with a unique but very custom set of characters where you're upgrading their card abilities, crafting and specifically equipping them with character-unique weapons and gear, gaining potions and resources, and then returning back to the battlefield to find and hunt another one of these beasts. Unlike Kingdom Death, I believe that these miniatures are going to come fully contained, so it doesn't have as much of a hobby aspect to it. But if you are a miniature painter, if you want amazing, disgusting creatures to include in any of your other games, or especially your RPG titles, Primal is going to be one of those that you should look to for some of the most remarkable miniatures I've seen in this space. Absolutely magnificent sculpts and designs and displays of these organic beast-like creatures. So why are we comparing them? Well, they both follow a similar structure in a lot of ways. They're both campaign games that journey through a series of progressions where you're going to be primarily going out on a hunt, gathering and getting resources from a beast or a big creature, bringing those back to your settlement, upgrading, leveling up, healing, going through the process of taking care of your tribe, either your settlement or your heroes. And then you're going back out to a event phase, and then a hunt phase, and then a showdown phase. The structure and progression of the game, the flow of the game, is very similar. They both also are insanely expensive and take a degree of time to get to the table. These are not going to be lightweight, sit down once in a blue moon to play type of games. I would venture to say both of these will be lifestyle games when you get them into your hands. And so if you were buying both of them at the same time, I have no idea how you'd be able to tackle playing both of them unless you just are already retired. But the good news is you could pick up KDM while you wait for Primal to arrive, or vice versa if you want to wait for the next printing of Kingdom Death to arrive. Along with that, why do people want me to compare these games? Well, they're miniature-based, they're showdown-based, they're hunt-based, but I think a lot of people also see similarities in the weapon crafting system, in the way that even some of the cards are laid out. The Showdown board itself is vastly different, but there is a reaction deck. There is card play between you and the different creatures, and Kingdom Death sort of innovated on that AI character personality system, or monster personality system. And Primal, I would say, is twisting or adapting upon that sort of idea of how do characters interact with you in a board state. Other than that, I think those are the primary reasons why people are considering or comparing them. There's been a few titles that have come out over the last year or two that have touched into this big boss battler. Oathsworn would be one of them. We have Aeon's Trespass, which is a game that I would really like to play and cover and compare sometime soon, and even Townsfolk Tussle, which is a one-shot KDM head-to-head. So, with that setup out of the way, let's talk about the showdown phase for each of these games. What is different between Primal and Kingdom Death? In Kingdom Death, you're going to have a big open grid. You're worried about positioning in the sense of getting behind the creature or hitting it from a vulnerable position or avoiding some of the most deadly attacks, but you are moving around a giant open space, so your miniatures are able to shift and adjust and get farther away from the creature and get into positions where they can strategically fire a long-range bow or avoid being detected. Whereas in Primal, because it is that circular pattern, and all of this is visible over on the campaign, or any of the gameplay or previews that we have shown. So if you want a deeper dive, that's where you should go reference. But Primal specifically is going to be working with that circular grid with only 4 zones, front, back, and left, and right. And so during the Showdown phase for Kingdom Death, I'm much more focused on my character's positioning and movement and interaction on the board state. I'm not playing cards from my hand, instead I'm activating weapons that I brought with me on my gear grid and a set of core or standard moves. I have also some survival actions that I can take that allow me to do things like dash, surge, dodge. It is very much about utilizing your AP or your action points in a way to take whatever move you can get. At the start of your character's turn, you will be able to, you'll have 1 move activation and 1 attack activation. That will relate with everything on your gear grid, and depending on the puzzle that you've built out and the special abilities that your hero or your character has brought with them or your survivor has brought with them, that is going to be the interplay on the board. The AI deck for Kingdom Death is going to be aggressive and personal. It is feeling like you are in a space that is dangerous, and the creature that you're facing has every intention of murdering you along the way, not just letting you walk off from this experience. Primal is going to be different. When it comes to the interplay on the board, in Primal I'm much more concerned about the sequencing of cards. Kingdom Death is closer to an RPG, where Primal is really a card puzzle in your hand, and it does this very, very well. The ability to customize and scale and build your character's deck then allows you to play a sequence of cards, red followed by yellow, followed by green, which triggers an attack, followed by a dodge, followed by, taking away a struggle token from the creature. That ability to sequence a series of cards one after another and upgrade your hand or draw extras or work with your companions is going to be where the main focus of the Showdown lies. Instead of moving around on this board, trying to position yourself strategically, you are going to be worried about positioning to a degree. There's going to be cards that relate to where the creature is currently vulnerable. You have to be in position to attack it. The creature is going to be spinning and moving based off of whoever is the primary target, so you can position in a way that allows other characters to have an advantage or be put into a preferable location, and there is going to be a degree of positioning-based reactions. You see, in Kingdom Death, you're always going to be drawing a hit location. That will trigger or determine what the reaction might be of the creature that you just hit. Whereas in Primal, you can clearly see what items or what reactions might be available. If you're starting in the front, if you use a red card, if you trigger a blue card, any of those will potentially trigger one of the 3 reaction cards that are currently in play. Those will have a variety of different effects, but oftentimes they'll result in a little bit of damage being done back to you, or canceling the attack, or causing the creature to retarget and shift their position. So, in Primal, you're much more focused on those 2 decks of cards. Your positioning does matter, but really the miniatures and the board is a lot more about the aesthetic and the visual cues, whereas the cards you're playing and that reaction pile, that card play of the creature itself, is really the main focus. Along with that, in Primal, until a certain point in the 2 hunts that I have faced off against, it really doesn't feel like the creature is interested in your demise. They're just interested in their own survival. I mean, Kingdom Death, you show up in front of a white lion and it has every intention to rip your throat out. In Primal, it sort of wants to bat you away and tell you to stop trying to hunt it. I mean, it is a Monster Hunter experience, and if any of you have played or experienced those video games, you know you are invading this zone of a creature that really had no interest in dealing with you, and if you threaten it, it will fight back. But it's not after you. It's not pursuing you. This is much more of a nightmare experience, where Primal is much more of a true classic JRPG or anime-style boss battler. Let's talk about the characters now. And feel free to ask any questions about that showdown if you're interested. Oh, and both of them, by the time you defeat the creatures, both of them will reward you with creature-specific gear and items, resources that you can take back and harvest, and your story will progress and upgrade as you play. Now, the other element of the showdown is going to be the characters themselves. In Kingdom Death, you are the weakest thing in this existence. You are survivors, and your settlement is important, but your survivors, as much as you might love them, are vulnerable and replaceable. And so every time you venture out, you'll be taking out usually a new or slightly new cast of characters, and usually by the time you come back home, one or two or all of those will have their ribcage broken or their head smashed against the cylinders or their, heart ripped out, and they will have faded into darkness and obscurity. The characters in Kingdom Death journey with you because of the gear grid specific upgrades. In KDM, the gear grid that you build is like a little 3x3 puzzle that you're trying to connect, getting armor sets and weapons and extra items that all link together in a certain pattern that unlocks new special abilities. And every character that ventures out will be able to carry those abilities with them. Along with that, in Kingdom Death, your characters do matter to a degree still, because their armor class, their own personal stats, whether it is strength or evasion, their personal journey and history, and the disorders or wounds or whatever other malicious effects they're carrying with them, still carry with them. But it doesn't matter if they die. That's not the case here in Primal. In Primal, no one's going to die. Instead, they'll be knocked out and have to re-come back with a series of wounds or damages that get built into their deck, but this is very much a hero-centric game. As you're playing, if you're playing the hammer or the shield, you're going to be able to feel like you are that character. Throughout the course of the campaign, whether it's, 15 or 11 chapters, you're going to be upgrading your deck. You're going to be grabbing weapons that dictate how you build out the cards that you're bringing with you. You're going to be becoming more powerful. Instead of dying, like in Kingdom Death, you get to bring the hero with you. And so when you slay a beast, you're brought back. You get to remember that. You carry the wounds and the victories with you throughout the course of the game. And by the end of the campaign, you've went through this entire narrative journey with a single character. Along with that, card play is so important in Primal. If you like deck construction, or you like crafting the perfect sequence of cards, that is where this game is going to shine and showcase. Whereas if you're looking for much more of a RPG experience, Kingdom Death is still going to be the grail when it comes to that. Because in Kingdom Death, that, gear grid that you build out is really dictating all of your abilities. And from there, you're just playing your character. You're just moving and advancing and positioning accordingly, doing your best to solve the puzzle of the fight. Whereas in Primal, you're building that deck of cards, and that deck of cards is everything you're able to do. And there are some really good moments when you're able to play one card after another, and sequence the correct or the perfect chain of events that your deck was built to do. When you're able to leverage certain abilities or traits, whether it is fire or ice, against the creature that you're fighting to deal more damage, to take advantage of a special card, to utilize or really poke at a weakness that the monster has, that dance, that interplay is going to be entirely card-focused. So, between the two, Primal is much more of a card puzzle. A very, very well-executed one that gives you as much interplay as I think you'd look for when it comes to a boss battler, but the main locations that you're paying attention to are going to be the reactions, the status cards, and then your own personal deck of cards. Whereas Kingdom Death is much more focused on the gear grid and then the puzzle on the table in front of you. Both of them do what they're trying to do very well, but both of them are vastly unique and different experiences. And I'd venture to say, for me personally, I still enjoy that closer to an RPG nature of KDM over the card-driven nature of Primal. For me, Primal feels a little bit more abstracted. It's not as personal or in my face, and I don't find that I connect with the theme or the interplay between the creature and my character as much as I do in Kingdom Death. the control I have over the board, over these vastly unique and thematic miniatures, is different. In a lot of ways, I feel like I don't necessarily need the miniatures as much as I need the cards that are on the table. And I'm not a deck crafting player. I don't really love going through the puzzle of solving and building out a deck of cards. And so right from the get-go, that color matching, that sequencing, and that deck construction is going to be something that doesn't fit my personal play style as much as the adventure and the RPG or D&D nature of Kingdom Death. So, shall we continue? And let me talk a little bit about the campaign as far as I'm aware of it. In Primal, your main feature is going to be those hunts, but those hunts will take you on a narrative journey. There'll be a sequence of cards that are events that you're playing through, along with setup-specific scenarios or guidelines that scale in difficulty depending on where you are in the campaign as you're playing with the characters. I believe a campaign in Primal is going to be a lot shorter than a campaign in Kingdom Death, whereas Kingdom Death is around a 60-hour journey. My guess would be Primal is probably we're talking 11 different sessions, probably 2 hours each. So I'm thinking maybe 25 to 30 hours to get through a cycle of Primal, potentially a little bit longer, and 60 or so to get through a cycle of Kingdom Death. In Primal, you're going to be marking off and checking different zones on a sheet to track how your progression has occurred, what you've been able to kill, what advantages and disadvantages you have, and how the world or the creatures have transformed based off of the impact that you've had. Kingdom Death is very similar in a lot of ways. Your campaign will go through one of various narrative journeys depending on the expansions that you have included, and from there you will choose what you're hunting, what you're fighting. The events will be a degree random, and as you journey through, you will be checking off boxes indicating how the world might have been impacted. And depending on what you come across, you'll be adding things to your storyline indicating what you must resolve in a following Lantern Year or a different step of the game. Both of these, I believe, will be played in single-session shots. So you'll go through a full hunt, showdown, and then settlement development phase, and the same thing over here with Kingdom Death. I believe this will be 11 to 15 sessions to get through an entire narrative journey. Kingdom Death is going to be closer to 20 or 30, depending on the expansions, again, that you've included, with the Gambler's Chest coming, hopefully, this summer. As far as weapon crafting and gear abilities, in Kingdom Death, the gear is going to be preferable for some characters, but largely universal. You can use it with almost anyone that you're playing. Again, the build that you have is more important than whoever is wearing it. Whereas here in Primal, the weapons and items that you get are going to be a lot more pinpointed, a lot more specific. If you're playing the shield, then the shields that you're crafting will be equipable to him and him alone. If you're playing the bow maiden, then the bows that you're crafting are going to be given to her. All of your characters feel souped up and badass and powerful, but you don't have a lot of versatility when it comes to the experience that you're playing with. If you're playing a bow maiden, you'll continue playing a bow maiden through the entirety of the campaign. Now, the thing that will change is going to be your deck construction element. As you get new weapons, you will unlock new cards. As you bring on new items, you will unlock new abilities. And depending on the gear grid that you have, that will have restrictions and inform the type of deck that you can build. How many of what color you can bring, how defensive or attack-focused or player-focused it's going to be. So again, if you like the deck construction element, Primal is going to be giving you that in stages throughout the course of the campaign. So, the best moments. The best moments in Primal and the best moments in Kingdom Death. For me, the best moments in Kingdom Death have been discovering the personality of a new creature. I really do find the AI system remarkable in this game. It's one of the things that I love the most about it. Whether you're fighting the Slenderman and rushing forward in a blind fury, feeling like you're all alone, sinking into a soupy blackness, or you're attacking the lonely tree with which is static in the center of the table with giant blobs of fruit dropping and exploding, or you're fighting the White Lion, which focuses on isolating, dragging you away, and then ripping out your throat. Kingdom Death, because it is a dice-built system, gives you the opportunity for some heartbreaking moments and some incredibly victorious moments. Rolling a Lantern 10 or a crit hit in Kingdom Death has felt better than almost any other game or any other game that I've played across the board. The best moments in Kingdom Death are when you get a sequence of 10 and then 10 and then 10 that allows you to wound the kitten, shove your guitars through its throat and then pull them out, leaving it gasping for breath and slowly dying. Or, of course, the classic ripping off the lion testicles. Kingdom Death is a game that is filled with highs and lows, sorrowful moments where luck and randomness works against you in the most tragic series of events, and then the best, most beautiful moments where the perfect sequence, the perfect structure, the perfect strategy all comes together to make something that should have been more difficult victorious, or make something that was difficult still manageable. I mean, a 2-hour showdown in this game can feel like a breeze or feel like time is flying by as you're focused and moving and positioning strategically. Kingdom Death is also, for me, going to be best at 1 or 2 players. I have played it at higher player counts. I do enjoy those sessions, but it's not where this game shines for me, especially after years and years of play. It is going to be a hard game to get to the table. Kingdom Death is a massive campaign game, but because of that, there is so much narrative and story and journeys that you can go on. I would venture to say that every session I've played of Kingdom Death has felt similar and yet unique from every other campaign that I've started and session that I've played. The stories that you get to tell while playing this game, the thematic experience of it is remarkable. Primal. The best moments in Primal are hands down going to be when you play a series of cards from your hand that allows you to give aid to another player, them drawing up. You're playing 1, 2, 3 cards, one that is setting up a defense, maneuvering you around the creature into the back zone where it's vulnerable, playing an attack that allows you to sequence with your bow and deal extra damage, that allows you to get an additional hit because the trait of your bow is what the creature is vulnerable to. Primal is going to shine when you're working together as a team, when your character feels powerful, when you're able to deal waves and waves of damage and mitigate the amount of response that the character itself or the monster itself is returning to you. Primal, for me, is a game that is all about amazing setups. Build your hand, craft it purposefully, know what's in your deck, and spend the time you need to upgrade your character, to accomplish specific tasks, and to, at some moment in the game, play everything down in a Hail Mary of furious blows and a flurry of damage. If you enjoy card play, if you want to feel powerful, Primal is going to show up in spades. Now, the worst moments of both games, and then that'll be the end of this video. For me, the worst moments of Kingdom Death are going to be the times that I would love to get it to the table, but I just can't. It is so aggressively heavy, not only to teach, but also to set up and play, that it really needs to be a lifestyle game. It needs to dominate a space and be set up almost permanently with a game group that's reoccurring in order to continue and carry on the narrative. I have never been able to complete a full campaign of this game, and I have played hundreds of hours of it at this point. I still absolutely love it, but I would also love to get to the end of it. The other thing is going to be the luck and dice rolling in Kingdom Death can feel very, very nasty at times, and there is a degree of cascading failure. For me, I enjoy watching things fall apart, but it can be kind of heartbreaking when you've spent 30 hours in a campaign and your favorite heroes die, and you return to the settlement and realize you only have 6 people left, and the odds of you surviving the butcher attack or the Kingsman is little to no. And so you can kind of look death in its face and understand that your campaign's coming to an end again, and 30 more hours is required for you to get back to this moment. It is a bittersweet journey, and it is one that can end in heartbreak and tragedy. Kingdom Death is a tactical puzzle. But as it scales as well, you get so much content in this game that there are certain stages where it's very hard to understand exactly what's happening. If you're playing solo or even 2 players, managing 2 characters with disorders and traits and special abilities and the gear grids that they have specifically, understanding the sequence of events and what exactly is supposed to go into this puzzle is also very, very hard to do. This is not a lightweight game, and if you're trying to pull it out or off of the shelf in a lightweight manner like I have in the past, it is a game that will challenge you at every stage. The worst moments for me in Primal. Primal for me is not as thematic as it promises it's going to be. I love looking at the beautiful artwork and the characters and the creatures and reading the flavor text, but when it comes to the actual gameplay mechanics of Primal, for me, again, like I've said multiple times, it is a card game. And it is exactly what the creators were intending to do. A giant boss battler that emphasizes itself off of deck construction and card play. But the most disappointing part of Primal for me has been the fact that playing a sequence of cards doesn't, in my mind, line up to a flurry of attacks. It doesn't feel like I've just rallied up to a cliff's edge and drawn my bow and fired, hitting the beast in the jugular and ripping through tendons. It doesn't feel like the creature just spun around, blowing a mountain of flame in my direction, scorching the earth or scorching the mountainside. Instead, it feels like I played a sequence of cards. One yellow, green, red, blue, that did 16 plus 5 plus 4 damage and allowed my partner to draw up 2 additional cards on his turn. It feels like the character or the creature turned a little bit on the dial and added a single flame token to the board. The thematic element, the story element, the adventure that I'm promised to go on, for me in Primal, off of the plays that I've had and the experience that I've been able to witness, just isn't there in the same way that it is for Kingdom Death. Primal is a card puzzle, and a good one at that. But it's not an RPG replacement. It's not a supplement for the narrative adventures that I really want to go on. Now, that being said, I have not been able to experience the full campaign, and I know there will be more story and flavor and events that are added into the sequence of this game. But based off of a 2-player game, a 3-player game, and a 1-player game, with the 2 creatures that are available, I can say that the creatures do scale in a unique way. They do feel different from each other. The heroes, even, once they start upgrading and getting their more advanced abilities, do start to feel unique in their construction and the way that they operate on the board. But even then, even with me being willing to identify and say that I like what they've done in terms of scaling and complexity and the puzzle that you're trying to solve, it ultimately, for me, is still a card puzzle above anything. Above a thematic story, above a monster hunter journey, above a big boss battler. It is a really, really good card puzzle. And it's going to be vastly more accessible than this one. So, those are my thoughts. I think both of these games have every right to have all the success that they have had. I'm super excited to see how well Primal is doing, and I know my partner, my co-host Jan, is incredibly excited about this game. For me, Primal may not be the perfect game for me. I mean, I might have already found it, or, a little spoiler, there's a few other titles that I've had the chance to play that I am looking forward to covering and doing a comparison of Kingdom Death. Things that I think might actually challenge the throne slightly more. But if you're looking for a more accessible card puzzle that allows you to be a hero, that still takes you on a journey of taking down big creatures and upgrading or leveling up your heroes, if you're able to get a 25 to 30 hour campaign to the table and you love giant badass miniatures, I think Primal, in every sense of the word, is an incredible game. Hats off to the designers, and I'm super thrilled for everyone that's going to get a chance to play it. So, this has been a comparison of Kingdom Death versus Primal. Hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation. Let me know if you like this style of, conversation videos, something that I'd like to do a little bit more of. The easiest thing for me to compare things to is Kingdom Death. So maybe we'll do On Mars or Terraforming Mars versus Kingdom Death in the future. Natural comparisons like that. Spirit Island, how does it compare to Kingdom Death? Either way, I appreciate you being here. If you made it to this point, hit that subscribe button down below. And if you are backing Primal, swing over and leave a quack in their comment section. Let them know that you appreciate the content that we're doing. I'm looking forward to getting the physical copy in my hands sometime soon. I can't wait to show it off, and I know Jan is really excited to experience this one. I'm bringing him the prototype immediately after this video so that he can get a chance to play it. All that being said, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.